we have allowed our medical establishment and scientific establishment to be essentially driven by government funding, which is now controlled by people who don't believe in science.
Right.
Hmm.
That is a problem, right? And Silicon Valley is controlled by people who believe in science fiction.
Hmm.
And so you sit there and you go, who believes in the real world?
Welcome to Disrupted Science, the occasional conversation between the authors of the upcoming book, How the Internet Disrupted Science, now available for pre-order. I'm Kent Anderson, here with my co-author Joy Moore, and today is Wednesday, November 19th, 2025. Hey, Joy.
Hey, Kent,
So
how's
that
it
was an
going?
interview. It went fast with Roger, didn't it?
It did.
So
Yeah. We
we
talked
had,
to him a couple days ago, and so we've had some time to kind of process what he shared with us.
yeah, his mind is powerful and moves fast. And so, if you're listening to this, strap in because Roger tells it like it is. And it's interesting perspective. And we wanted to bring it to this audience. I was fortunate enough to make Roger's acquaintance some years ago. And he's proven to be one of the most generous and responsive people I've ever met. He just, if you ask him, he will, in my experiences, he'll find the time or accommodate you. And his experience with Silicon Valley, his personal relationships with Mark Zuckerberg, Sheryl Sandberg, and other leaders there, his disenchantment with what has gone on in the past 15 years or so, and
Hmm.
now his concerns and mathematically valid, financially valid concerns about AI hype are really salient, and we think important for the audience of this podcast to understand.
Hmm. Yeah, one of the things that as we've been watching the hype about AI and the implementation of AI in scientific and academic publishing, whether it's through products or people generating papers and letters to the editor with them, or them becoming, workflow tools. It's just such a disconnect from what we're hearing from the top minds in the broader industry, and in the financial sectors is if it's not doing what we think it is at the highest level, why do we think that magically scientific publishers are going to figure it out in a better way?
Right.
And so just mixing this technology with the scientific record, which is already a delicate ecosystem, and an organic ecosystem, just seems even more dangerous once you listen to people like Roger who are talking about what's really going on.
Yeah, and it also seems like since the time we talked with him, the financial problems that the the big AI systems are facing have become even more pronounced. And so, well, it's a great interview. He was fantastic. And so, without further ado, we'll just dive in and let him speak for himself. So here we go. Today, we're talking with Roger McNamee, an entrepreneur, author, musician, and investor with a legacy in Silicon Valley that stretches from his days heading the T. Rowe Price Science and Technology Fund through the social media era and now into the crypto and AI era. McNamee wrote a book in 2019, Zucked, Waking Up to the Facebook Catastrophe, where he outlined how his high hopes for his protege Mark Zuckerberg had been dashed. More recently, he's been reflecting on the mismatches between capital investments and revenues for large AI companies. McNamee is a member of the band Moonalice, which has some of the nicest posters in rock music and does some really cool tours in music. And it performs and records regularly. It's great to have him with us today, so welcome, Roger.
It's a great pleasure to be here, Kent and Joy.
Welcome.
So I want to dive straight into some things because I know time is precious for all of us. So you said in 2019 that Silicon Valley was once an idealistic place for engineers who wanted to make the world a better place through technology. How would you describe it today?
So, Kent, I think what the problem began in 2010. So,
Mm,
right after the financial crisis of 2008, the Federal Reserve essentially made capital free, right? In order to protect the economy, it drove interest rates to zero. And a set of entrepreneurs and investors in Silicon Valley had an insight that they could raise essentially unlimited amounts of money if they could craft a story big enough
mm,
that they could get people to believe it. And the first time I saw it, and I did not understand it when I first saw it, the first time I saw it was with Uber, because the CEO of Uber comes into our and to make this presentation to raise their Series B. And the explanation is that breaking the law was the key to the business, that they would just ignore all the local laws for taxis and limousines and go forward. And then shortly thereafter, we met with Airbnb, and their pitch was the same thing, but for hotels.
mm.
And it then the next thing that came up was the Internet of Things, where the basic notion was, I'm going to sell you a product that spies on you. And then came crypto, where we're basically going to take control of the currency out of the hands of government. So it's one of the two core things that a democracy gives to, the people give to the government: control of the legitimate use of force and also currency. We're going to put that in private hands because that will allow us to play all kinds of games that we couldn't do if we were legitimate. Right. And so it goes on and on. But then in 2016, basically what happens, I see these things between 2010 and 2012. I tell my partners, you know what? The culture of Silicon Valley has changed. We're
Hmm.
no longer about empowerment. We're no longer about productivity. We're about the use of data and capital to exploit human weakness. So Silicon Valley has become predatory, and I don't do predatory.
Mm.
So I exit the business thinking, okay, this is just a personal choice. I'm just going to go away. And then in 2016, when Brexit happened, I realized that third parties were using Facebook to undermine democracy.
Hmm.
And at that point, I realized I couldn't just sit still. And so I crafted what was originally going to be an op ed, but in the end was a memo to Mark Zuckerberg and Sheryl Sandberg, two people I'd mentored,
Hmm.
that said, hey, look, I believe third parties are using Facebook to undermine democracy and to undermine civil rights. And I
Right.
gave them a whole bunch of very specific examples with citations. I didn't include Brexit because I didn't have proof, but I
Hmm.
had lots of other things. And I said, look, you do not want to have this company develop a reputation as a company that undermines democracy or harms civil rights. That's just, even if you don't believe in democracy, even if you don't believe in civil rights, you don't want to have that as your brand because it's just going to kill you.
Hmm.
And for 4 months, I tried to persuade Facebook to do the right thing. And
Hmm.
then it became clear to me, you know what? They're not going to do the right thing.
Right.
And at that point, I became an activist. And the problem is that you can go out to the world and say, hey, there's a real problem here, that Silicon Valley is essentially cashing in 60 years of goodwill from the years when it was in the business of empowerment and productivity.
Hmm. Hmm.
And it's basically systematically lying to you about everything.
Mm.
And it is essentially coming out with the next big thing every 2 or 3 years.
Right.
And each one of those things is more predatory, more adversarial than the product it replaced. And, the great scholar Chris Gilliard has this great line that, every technology is worse than the one it replaces. And that has been true since 2010. And what's incredible is now we're 15 years later and we still trust Silicon Valley. We still use the new products. And when you get to AI is in a sense it's the pièce de résistance. It takes everything that's been wrong for the last 15 years
Hmm.
and amplifies it a thousandfold.
So I
So
want
that
to
the
talk
tech,
to you a little bit about that and the
go for it.
kind of double dealing that's going on. So one of the things that came out last week was Chan Zuckerberg Initiative. right? Which was said that their new focus is on science and AI. And there are a couple of things with that. One, a lot of people and all the media, the coverage that I saw portrayed CZI as a philanthropic endeavor. But it's really an LLC that's controlled completely by Priscilla and Mark. So that's one thing. Then the second is, here's this next story, which is science and AI are going to somehow take things further, right? So how do you reflect on those things as part of
Well,
your overall thrust here?
yeah. So would you mind if I just put the whole thing in context? Because I think it
Please.
helps to start at the beginning. So the first thing to understand is I've been investing in Silicon Valley since 1982. By the time
Wow.
I came along, by the time I came along, people had already been making claims about the imminent arrival of AGI for 25 years.
Yep.
Okay. So roughly every 10 years, there is a new mania
Right.
around AI. And the promise is give us 10 times more compute and 10 times more data, and we will give you AGI. And
Mm-hmm.
there are two basic ways of doing it. But the way that large language models work is they aggregate a ton of historic data and then apply statistics to it. So the essential notion is if what you're looking for is the average, right? The mean value for a large data set of stuff that's already happened, it's going to be great. So for things like language translation, that's wonderful. The problem is that things where an average result is what you're looking for are not super valuable. The things that are really valuable are the things where the result is in the tails of the distribution.
Right. The black
And
swans. Yeah.
and and there is no way in God's green earth LLMs are ever going to be any good at that. You may be able to put some technology on top of it that helps you with that, but LLMs themselves, there's just no way. It's not possible. So the first thing to understand is the underlying premise. I'm going to say something that your editor will hate. The underlying premise is bullshit. Okay, and
Yep.
it's like, so you don't even have to use these things to understand that what they're telling you isn't true.
Right.
Okay, they're telling you that this will do everything. It will make everything better. It's going to change the whole world for the better.
Right.
So then you look at the underlying mechanics of it, right? And there's obviously all the issues around training, right? Which is the theft of people's
Right.
creations,
The
the theft
extraction.
of their personal data. If you use Microsoft Office 365 or Google Docs or Gmail or any cloud-based product controlled by big tech, you have to assume that every single thing you're doing is being ingested into their AI,
Mm-hmm.
which means eventually somebody who has enough interest can put 1,000 people on the problem and get the AI to regurgitate your information, right?
Right.
So,
Mm-hmm.
so from a security point of view, it is a nightmare, right?
Yep.
It's obviously a privacy nightmare, but it's also a security nightmare. All
Mm-hmm.
these corporations are doing all this work in cloud-based services, thinking, well, this is private to us, and you go, well, no, not anymore.
Right.
Okay, now it's every big tech company is getting this stuff. So that's a problem. Then there's obviously the issue of the training uses an intense amount of energy and an incredible amount of water. And a lot of the data centers for doing that are in places where energy and water are scarce,
Mm-hmm.
right? We're building all these data centers in Arizona.
Right.
I mean, what are we thinking? I mean, I've had long conversations with the governor and the senators in Arizona about, guys, I understand the allure of billions of dollars being invested right now, but what are you going to do to protect your citizens from the fact that the water is going to be used up and the Colorado River is almost dry?
Mm-hmm.
And on top of that, the rate that they pay for energy is going to go way up. How are you going to protect them from that? Okay. And again, this is assuming you're okay with the theft of all the copyrighted stuff and the theft of all the private
Right.
stuff, right?
Right. Right. Right.
Then
And all
then
the
you
false
get into,
promises.
well, hang on, we haven't even got to the false promises yet, right? So then you look at, okay, so this people go, oh, well, AI is driving the economy. The problem is it is circular. The biggest guys, so NVIDIA, Google, Microsoft, Meta, Amazon, Oracle, are basically their valuations are inflated. They have tons of cash. They take that cash, they then invest it in companies that then immediately turn around and buy their services.
Mm-hmm.
So they turned their capital into revenue. Now, it used to be that that wasn't legal. Okay. You're not supposed to be able to have these circular things. The
Right.
problem here is the end demand looks like it's in the low tens of billions of dollars, maybe as high as 40 billion.
Right.
The industry has invested $1 trillion
Mm-hmm.
since the middle of 2022.
Right.
$1 trillion. That's essentially as much as has ever been invested in technology put together
Right.
to generate 40 billion revenues.
Right.
But let's just say for laughs, they were generating 400 billion revenues. The math doesn't work. The whole software industry today is $780 billion. That's all it is. And they've
Yeah.
invested $1 trillion.
Right.
And keep in mind, it's not enough just to get revenues. You got to make a return on it,
Right.
right?
And
So
before all the CapEx goes, right?
before it becomes obsolete.
Right.
And the big thing that they don't tell you is they say, oh, it's just like the internet. I go, hang on, dude. I was there for the internet. Tim Berners-Lee invented the World Wide Web on the world's most expensive personal computer, a Next. They then did the first generation, the academic portion of the internet, and therefore the World Wide Web, on silicon graphics supercomputers. But those things were so totally uneconomic that when commercialization began, so this is the Yahoo and Inktomi era, they moved to Sun. It was about 10% as expensive as silicon graphics. And with that, they did the early commercialization. So this is the 90s.
Mm-hmm.
Then Google comes in and looks at this and goes, this is ridiculous. So Google went and made stripped down Intel motherboards that cost basically 1% of what a Sun cost, which is to say a tenth of 1% of what a silicon graphics cost.
Right.
And the wide scale commercialization took place on that technology.
Yeah.
Now, here, what are we doing? We spend $1 trillion on supercomputers. I mean, this is certifiably nuts. And again, if the technology actually delivered what it promised, this would be interesting. But what are they actually telling corporations?
Right.
Right? You listen to any time that Altman is in front of a corporate customer or a government, we're going to give you efficiency. What does efficiency mean? It means we're going to allow you to replace human beings
Mm-hmm.
with computers. So what kind of human beings are they going to replace? The ones they stole the data from, knowledge workers,
Mm-hmm.
right? So now, how do knowledge workers fit into the economy? Well, they're like, what, half of the employees in the economy are knowledge workers, something like that?
Yeah.
And these are people who are paid way above average. They have families, right? The whole 9 yards.
Yeah. Yeah.
So let's assume that Sam Altman's promises come true. And the corporate customers buy this technology and they start to lay off knowledge workers. How many are they going to lay off? I'm going to guess that each one's going to aim to lay off 20, 30, 40% of their knowledge workers
Right.
and replace them with AI. So let's say you lay off 20% of knowledge workers nationwide, right? So that's going to be at least 10% of total employment.
Right. So unemployment
And it's
spikes.
people who, unemployment spikes, but it's not just that. The
Mm-hmm.
impact on the economy is way bigger than that because people
Mm-hmm.
earn at least twice the national average,
Right.
right? Many of them earn 4, 10 times the national average.
Yeah.
So you're going to withdraw. So let's say you have a 10% increase in unemployment and a 15% hit to economic output. I'm sorry, who benefits?
Yeah.
In what world is that actually a good outcome?
Yeah.
And here's the thing. The products don't actually work the way they promise.
Right.
So the services you're going to get are going to work way less well than the human beings they replace.
Yeah.
And you will have created massive misery. And by the way, if these guys are really successful, they'll actually unemploy 2/3 of all knowledge workers,
Right.
right? Which would be, say, a third of our total employees.
Right.
And my point here is from a government policy point of view, from a political point of view, in what world is that a good idea? In what
Yep.
world is that a better future?
Yep.
So I would sit here and go, this is literally Rube Goldberg's idea of a great new technology. It's one
Mm-hmm.
incredibly stupid idea piled on top of another, and all presented by people who not only know better, but who recognize that the story matters more than the reality.
Mm-hmm.
Because I mean, if you sit there and you look at this, the average person in the United States or around the world is very skeptical about AI.
Right.
Who's not skeptical? Elected officials and policymakers,
Mm-hmm.
CEOs,
Yeah.
and the press.
Right.
And
Yeah.
guess what? That's all you need to maintain a
Yeah.
mania.
Yeah.
And the thing that's wild about it is that no amount of contrary data breaks through. It's exactly like what happened when I was arguing about the threat to democracy,
Mm-hmm.
initially from social media and then from cloud-based applications. And now,
Right.
so if you sit there
And
and look
now
at
here
this,
we are. Yeah.
so you have to ask yourself a very simple question. You asked me about the economic problem.
Right.
So we've created this massive mania, right? And 34% of the S&P 500 is big tech.
Right.
And these are the guys channeling the money in that's creating this bubble, right?
Yeah.
Now, do you think they know they've created a bubble? Of course they do.
Mm-hmm.
But they're not afraid because they saw 2008 and they realize that they have government officials wrapped around their pinky. They have
Right.
CEOs wrapped around their pinky.
Right. Well, they
They've
portrayed
made
it as a
themselves
battle with China and it's national
all,
security
all,
and all
all
that
of which
stuff.
is
Right.
all of which is total nonsense. Chinese aren't
Mm-hmm.
pursuing it this way at all.
Right.
What are these guys doing? The way to think about this is if you're a government buyer or a corporate buyer of these products, you think you're buying a tool which will increase your productivity. That's not what you're buying at all. You are turning over your business or your government to a puppet master
Mm-hmm.
because AIs are inscrutable
Yeah.
and they are controlled by somebody who works for the guy who made the AI.
Yeah.
So they have the ability at a minimum to influence every decision that every customer makes.
Yeah. Thumb on the scale.
That's
So I want to return
hang
back
on.
to the.
That's
Oh, yeah.
that's the best that's the best case.
Yeah.
The worst case is that they literally control the governments and they control the corporations. I
Yeah.
think that is the play they're actually making.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Same way the banks did in 2008. They knew that they would come out of there stronger because after the bubble burst, the
Right.
government would bail them out and then they would control everything.
Yeah. So one of the things you mentioned about how none of this breaks through, there was the $1 trillion seems to be the kind of number that people can't quite wrap their heads around. So I read something great. It was actually in a comic strip, right? A million seconds is under 12 days. A billion seconds is almost 32 years. A trillion seconds would be 32,000 years. So think about that as a way to
Yeah.
kind of boil down the scale. I mean, there's no way they can pay that money back, but you're right. They're trying to
No,
backstop it
hang on.
with government funding and all of that. Yeah.
And the CFO, Sarah Fryer of
Yeah.
OpenAI, said this
Yeah.
publicly last
Right.
week
Yeah, she did.
and trial ballooned the idea that the government should guarantee all their investing. And I'm sitting here going, that is insane. I mean,
Well, they're kind of turning the
yeah,
last card in the hand that you knew they were playing, right? I mean, that's kind of it seems like in a very quick short order they're going through their cards, right? And that's one of the last cards they're going to play before this because
I'm
they can
sorry. You're saying that as though they aren't the dealer and the owner of the
And
room and everything else.
right,
This
the
is,
casino,
I mean,
right?
they're this. I mean, my point is, I think they're doing us a favor by telling us, but I don't think it makes any difference. I mean, look,
No, true.
the greatest joke I've ever heard about ChatGPT is that there is only one job in the economy that ChatGPT can do. It was literally designed to do, and that is to be the CEO of a Fortune 500 company. Because the job of a Fortune 500 company is to do exactly what it did yesterday, hoping for the same result, right?
Mm,
That's literally what ChatGPT does, right?
right.
I mean, it looks at the historical data and suggests doing the same thing. And, you know, so I look at this and I'm just going, the failure of imagination, the failure to think critically
Hmm.
is epidemic in our country. And you
Right.
see it in every domain.
Yeah. Yeah.
And, you know, it's not just that we fail to learn from history. We literally ignore history as though it never happened.
Yeah.
And that is not a healthy situation.
Right. So one of the things that's different about I wanted to get back to one of the twists that CZI has put on this, which is kind of aiming for science, right? Because that's kind of where we live and breathe. And there's a fair amount of buy-in to processing scientific claims through AI systems, thinking that it's going to, be more efficient, be faster, yield more insights, things of that nature. But you're saying that that doesn't seem even possible, that it's trending toward the mean, it's meh, whatever
Well,
shape it takes, and it can't discover
well,
things, right?
well, sorry. The way I would describe it
Mm-hmm.
is that it anything that you can do by applying regression analysis effectively to large data sets, it
Right.
will do very well. And I'm
Hmm.
sure there's some use cases in science where that's true.
Mm-hmm.
My point is not that this stuff has no utility,
Right.
but rather the utility is relatively narrow
Mm-hmm.
and not super high value.
Mm-hmm.
The
Yep.
industry is selling the exact opposite of that.
Right.
And in doing so, it is setting the stage for one of several disastrous outcomes, right? I mean, the
Right.
point here is I don't know which way it's going to go down.
Mm-hmm.
Now, right now, if I had to bet, I would bet that they are going to be successful at getting governments and corporations to deploy this stuff widely, after which they will control those governments and
Mm-hmm.
so they're looking for China level control,
Right.
but in big tech hands rather than government hands.
Right.
And
Right.
the notion that somehow the Western world would be better off that way,
Mm.
controlled by a handful of corporations, that's the answer to whatever the threat is from China, that strikes me as not believable.
Yeah. Dangerous. Downright dangerous. Yeah. So what's the best case scenario,
I guess the
given where
best
we are
case
right
scenario,
now?
I think the best case scenario would be to have a financial crisis immediately,
Mm-hmm.
in which somehow the government decides, you know what, the heck with you guys, we'll just let you stew.
Right.
And when you're talking about a financial crisis as your best case,
That's not a good situation to be in.
the situation is perilous,
Is
right?
dire. Yeah, absolutely. Yep. All right.
And
Um,
look, I'm not a perfect judge of this stuff. Okay,
no.
I don't have
Hmm.
clairvoyance, but I've been around for 43 years in
Mm-hmm.
Silicon Valley, watching how the industry operates, and I can tell you there was a before
Mm-hmm.
that was when Silicon Valley was created in 1956 up until roughly 2010.
Right.
And there's an after, which is a 15-year sentence. And here's the thing: you guys live in the world of science.
Mm-hmm.
Silicon Valley talks about innovation. What was the last truly innovative product to come from Silicon Valley? I would argue that it was the iPhone.
Yeah.
Yeah. It
18
was that
years ago.
era. Yeah. Kindle,
18,
iPhone. 2007 was
18
a
years
good
ago.
year. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So let's think about this for just a minute.
Mm-hmm.
How many venture-backed startups have there been in the tech industry broadly defined in the US since
Mm-hmm.
2010?
Right.
There have been tens of thousands. How many of them have made a profit? I can only find one, CrowdStrike, of
Mm.
companies created since 2010,
Hmm.
which tells me that they're not even trying to create businesses.
Hmm.
They're trying to create market value.
Yeah.
Right. To get
Okay,
acquired.
or just to sell in the secondary market, right? The way
Right.
OpenAI has,
Right. Right.
right? That the last thing they want to do is go public and have accountability. I mean, look how that's worked out for drawing a blank on their name, the cloud services guy. I mean,
Oh,
that's been a
I do.
disaster.
Yeah.
And, it's, you know, I just, the way I look at this is, you know, through eyes that have seen a lot, but don't pretend to see all. I may well be wrong. I don't think I'm wrong about the underlying technology. I'm pretty
Mm-hmm.
sure I'm not wrong about what's going on in this bubble. I'm certain I'm not wrong about the intent of the people who are playing this game.
Yeah.
I do not think it is a coincidence that suddenly all the people who are leading the LLM industry have suddenly gone hard right, anti-democratic.
Right. And showed up at the inauguration. So have you read
Well,
Adam Becker's book about all of
I
this?
have not. I have not.
Oh, I'd recommend it. I think you'd like it.
What's it called?
More everything
Forever.
forever.
Hmm.
It's about the kind of the science fiction story that they've all bought into about the singularity and how, you know, we can get to populate the galaxy with billions and trillions of humans if we just use AI to slip the bonds of
So
mortality.
one of the things that I would just point out
Mm-hmm.
is that when you turn over national policy to corporations, you have to expect that those corporations will act in what they perceive as their self-interest.
Mm-hmm.
If you turn your national policy over to people who believe that dystopian science fiction is a recipe book, you're going to get that.
Yep.
And this whole notion that somehow we're going to colonize Mars and that's going to be better than living on Earth,
Mm.
it's like, I'm sorry, that is such obvious nonsense,
Yep.
right? I mean, let's just assume you can figure out how to live on Mars. The notion that it's going to be as rich and fulfilling as living on Earth is crazy. And,
Yep.
sit here, that $1 trillion. So when the Paris Climate Accords happened, the conclusion was that it was going to cost $10 trillion over 10 years globally
Mm-hmm.
to reverse the problems in climate change. Now, we have in 2.5 years spent $1 trillion. Well, let's call it 3 years. We've spent $1 trillion in the United States. Our share of that 10 was 4 over 10 years. And
Mm-hmm.
we've just blown the equivalent of 1 trillion of it, claiming we couldn't possibly do that.
Right.
And I'm going, wait a minute, you've just wasted $1 trillion on this nonsense.
Right. Which is actually
The
ratcheting
court,
up your expense to undo it too, because of the
well, yeah, it's basically making it impossible, right? I
right.
mean,
Yeah. Right.
it's, because you're reviving coal-fired plants and
Yeah.
you're resuscitating, you know, any energy source you can find. And
Mm-hmm.
now Google's talking about putting power plants and data centers in space. And I'm going, seriously, guys,
Yeah.
you really need to live in the present for just a few minutes.
Right. And we can't afford SNAP benefits, so there's great stuff too.
Well, this
Yeah.
is the point. This is the
Right.
point,
Hmm.
right? That the government these guys chose, right? The form of government these guys chose is one that views most people as expendable.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm sitting there going, that's a choice, right? And the thing is, we voted for this. That's the part that's so disheartening for me. I spent, more than 8 years suggesting that if we did not do something about big tech, we were going to lose democracy. Okay, so
Mm-hmm.
that's now past tense. We've lost
Right.
democracy. And, well, I mean, maybe we've gotten a different form of democracy. We got the one we chose, right?
Mm-hmm.
Which is this one. And I'm sitting there going, okay, I get it, right? People aren't interested in my perspective, and that's fine. Um, but I got to find a place to live, and I got to find a way of doing that,
Right.
right? Because it, we're going down a path that will immiserate tens of millions of people.
Yeah.
For what?
Right.
So that one CEO can get $1 trillion pay package?
Right. Yep.
I mean,
Absolutely. That seems
In
to be,
what
there's
world
a
is
lot
that
of greed. There's a lot of greed.
but in what world is that a good idea, right? I mean,
Mm-hmm.
how is, you know, some brilliant person years ago made the point that the existence of billionaires is a policy failure,
Yep, absolutely.
right? And the point is, the fact that nobody agrees with me is, from where I sit, they're entitled not to agree with me, right?
Right.
And the point is, so many people don't agree with me that they voted for this. And I'm going, okay, I don't know why you guys are interested in my perspective on this, because at some level, my perspective came up for a vote and was voted down, right?
Yeah.
And, uh,
Well, what we're
you know,
seeing is so I mean, we agree with you, but the other thing is that we're seeing a lot of people speaking up now along the same lines, and that's part of why we're doing the podcast and things like that.
no,
So,
but so what,
Yeah.
right? I mean, the point is,
yeah,
nobody's doing
I
anything
don't give
about
up
it,
that
okay?
easily.
Okay, but that would have been a lot more useful attitude 10 years ago, okay?
I was
Because
doing it then
10
too,
years
but
ago,
yeah,
10 years ago, we actually had a fairly large
yep,
playing field on which to exercise these things.
yep,
Now the playing field has shrunk to something
yep,
quite narrow. And
yep,
and we are largely praying for external events to bail us out here, which, by the way, they may, right?
yeah,
I mean,
mm-hmm,
the contradictions that are inherent in the so-called AI revolution are so enormous, and there are so many of them
mm-hmm,
that the thing getting, coming apart of its own poor manufacture, that's possible.
yeah. I mean,
But
I think the same thing's happening in, with Maha and science is that, the kind of libertarian view of, and how they're handling things. We've got whooping cough outbreaks, we've got measles resurgent in Canada, you've got all these other things that are happening to people. And I think that at some point people are going to say, all right, enough, this is the wrong direction. And we now have evidence of it and we feel it. So,
so you tell me,
hmm
what's the thing that's going to get people to actually want to act, right? I mean, you know, right now, the United States does not have a functioning opposition party.
hmm
The Democrats are every bit as committed to AI and Silicon Valley as Republicans, in some ways more so.
hmm
Um, that almost, many of the root mistakes that led to where we are now were committed by Democratic politicians,
hmm
right? So this isn't the Democrat Republican thing. This is a, neoliberal versus everybody else problem.
yeah,
And, so I look at this and I go, I want to believe you're right. And I think eventually you will be right. The question is, what do we have to go through to get to that point?
right, exactly.
And what does that look like? I've been looking for ways to do this through the democratic process.
Right.
You're describing how you're going to do this through, shall we say, more kinetic means,
hmm
where, people are going to get
Well, I
torches
think
and
I
pitchforks.
think there's actually a kinetic of dropping things, right? So I've noticed more people turning off AI in their Microsoft, more people asking for refunds from because they don't want Copilot, more people going away from these tools. And so I think there's a potential for the tools to just, like you said, they seem to be capping out at a certain level, and workers have not adopted them at the level that employers thought they might. And I think employees are starting to say that's too much trouble. It's too difficult. I talked to a doctor who said, well, he had a mandate that he had to do it, but it takes too much time. So he's just kind of joking through it. And a nurse I think we talked to did the same thing where she's like, yeah, I
Yeah.
say I'm using it, but I'm not really using it.
But my question for Roger on that point is, does it matter if people use it or not? Big picture.
I, th- I think it matters enormously
Okay.
because everything you do with it essentially increases its power.
Mm-hmm.
So if you think of it as a massive surveillance system, first and foremost, right? That the first thing that happens is if you use it, it's surveilling you. So having failed to learn the lesson from Facebook, having failed to learn the lesson from Google search, we then went to Google Docs and Microsoft 365 and allowed them to surveil us. And now we're doing this, having failed to learn that lesson, we're now doing the same thing with generative AI. And
Mhm.
I look at this and I go, look, I mean, it's obvious we don't care, right? And I think we should care,
Mm-hmm.
but it's going to take some passage of time to find out who's right about that.
Yeah. So I'm going to pivot a little bit to an area where you and I find life to be, I think, better. So one of the things so I'm in a Tom Petty tribute band, right?
Uh-huh.
And one of the things I've noticed over the past 3 years is that however they're doing it, both on social media and in AI, the Petty estate has backed out Tom Petty out of everything. You can no longer get images of Tom Petty through OpenAI. You can no longer use Tom Petty as a tag in Facebook. So I think that some of the media properties are wising up to the extractive nature and exploitative nature of tech.
Except Universal just cut a deal to partner with AI guys on
Yeah, maybe, but
crafting
there may be
AI
carve
versions of
outs.
their artists.
But right.
There
So
have
we'll see.
always been car
Yeah, we'll see
there
where
have
that
always been
goes.
carve outs.
Yeah, but
Yeah,
it's been
we'll see
interesting
where
to
that goes.
see it pulled back, and who knows what kind of model they'll have on that. But I wanted to ask you about Moonalice a little bit
Sure.
and kind of pivot to like that's a source of joy, right?
Yeah, so I've been in this particular band for 18 years, and
Wow.
I've been playing in bands forever. And
Right.
Moonalice was originally put together by the great producer T-Bone Burnett. Right after he did "Oh Brother, Where Art Thou," he
Oh
got
my.
they got the Academy Award for the movie, and he got uh, the Grammy for the album of
Hmm.
the year.
Right.
And so he decides he's going to make a series of albums in each genre of Americana music. So if you think about "Oh Brother, Where Art Thou" as being kind of bluegrass,
Right.
uh, kind of mountain
Mm-hmm.
kind of music,
Yeah.
he was going to go and do a New York folk. He got Elvis Costello. He wanted everybody to create new bands to do this. So
Oh wow.
Elvis Costello's great, and he gets us to do San Francisco psychedelic, and then he decides to get a new Nashville group, and he puts together Alison Krauss and Robert Plant.
That's how
And
that
so
happened, huh?
all three of us are in the studio at the same time. Elvis in the East Coast, and Robert Nelson and Moon Alice are in L.A. at the Village Recorders. They're in one studio and we're in the other.
Wow.
And recording an album with T-Bone Burnett is really an experience. I mean,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
the original version of Moon Alice had G.E. Smith, who'd been the head of the Saturday Night Live
Yeah.
band,
Yeah.
right? He'd been
Yeah.
Bob Dylan's guy. It had
Right.
Jack Cassidy from the Jefferson Airplane and Hot Tuna. So,
Wow.
he's in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame.
Yeah.
I had
Yeah.
Pete Sears, who
Yeah.
was originally with Rod Stewart for Maggie May, and then the Jefferson Starship, so it had all these people who had real cred, just the way the other guys had real cred.
Right.
And so we make this album, and it's really exciting. We get towards the end, and we're trying to figure out we're going to get a label and all that. And all of a sudden, T-Bone says, "I need to pause you guys for a little bit. I got to work on this thing with Robert Nelson."
Mm.
So he puts that album out, and of course, it gets the Grammy for Album of the Year. And T-Bone goes on tour with them, and Elvis and Moon Alice are completely forgotten. And so I'm not even sure Elvis finished his album,
Right.
but we wound up just doing ours like the old fashioned, over the counter way.
Right.
But the band was very serious. And, in the first 10 years, our peak years, we were playing 100 to 125 shows a year. We were touring nationwide.
Wow.
We had a real audience. It was really fun. Put out a ton of albums.
Yeah, yeah.
And then right before COVID, summer 2019, we decided to it's getting, GE has moved on to the Roger Waters band. He went straight from us to Roger Waters. Jack went back to Hot Tuna because his wife died. And so the reason he was able to work with us was he couldn't do the Hot Tuna touring schedule. And so
Mm,
he needed a gig. So he came with us. And we
right.
added John Molo, was the drummer for Bruce Hornsby and the Range and most of
Mm,
the Grateful
wow.
Dead follow-on bands. And so we were down to being a quintet. And we were at this festival and we were yakking with Lester and Dylan Chambers. So Lester was the lead singer in the Chambers Brothers. And these three women, three sisters called the T Sisters, who do tight harmony. And we were asking them, well, what are you guys doing? Well, they were bored. Well, we were bored. And so he said, why don't we just try playing a gig? Put our three bands together and just try playing gigs, see how it goes. And it was a blast. So
Oh,
we
wow.
invited them to join us for an East Coast tour that finished at the Locken Festival in Virginia. And it was just magical. So we decided we're going to be the new Moonalice is going to be this 10-person band with five incredible vocalists. We were sort of jam band style stuff
Right,
before. The vocals were fine, but they weren't special. We were putting
right.
really special vocals on it. And because of Lester, we were getting not only the whole Chambers Brothers catalog, but real cred for both soul and funk music, which is really fun stuff to play. So we
Mm-hmm.
decided we're going to do that. And for those first 6 months, they play all of our shows. And the crowds got to be huge. Like we were filling up not only every place we're in, we're getting chances to play bigger and bigger places. And our
Nice.
booking guy's going nuts. So he sets up this huge tour in 2020. We're going to be playing large clubs and small theaters, like basically across the country. He was aiming for 70 shows,
Mm,
but maybe an average audience of 700 plus, which is economically a viable space.
yep.
It was going to start like the uh, 20th of April of 2020. Needless to say, none of it happened. And then
Oh, man.
two of the T sisters had babies. Lester got sick, and the result was when quarantine broke and we could go back on the road, we were not able to do it.
Mm,
And so we missed that window.
yep.
And so basically, you know, we're we've become a band that mostly records and then plays shows from time to time in the Bay Area. We're playing 30 plus shows, but we're not traveling with 10 people. The economics post COVID
Yeah, yeah,
for
yeah.
everybody in the music business are terrible. I mean, if you
Right.
were a touring band, your costs literally doubled, and what you
Yep.
get paid every night at best has held steady.
Right.
And the math just no longer works.
Right.
We don't need to make money, but we can't lose a fortune doing it.
Right.
And so uh, it's still enormously fun. But we have lived, in a sense, the story of club musicians.
Yeah.
In that people who used to go to shows once a week are going once a month. People who
Mm-hmm.
went once a month are going 4 times a year.
Yep.
People went 4 times a year, going once a year. And when they're doing it, they're going to something that looks like Taylor Swift or Dead and Company or
Right.
Paul McCartney, and they're spending $500 for the one show.
Right.
And we can't compete with that.
Yeah,
And
yeah, yeah.
and so, but it's still enormously fun. It's still enormously therapeutic. And the band has put out a ton of great music since quarantine. I mean, we've recorded a lot of stuff. We've written a lot of stuff. If you're on any streaming service, Moonalice is one word, Moonalice, comes
Yep.
from
We'll
Jackie
put we'll
Gleason
put links
to
in
the
the show notes.
Moonalice.
Don't worry.
Yeah, and it's fun stuff, and
Mhm.
but it's all love, peace, and happiness, which was a song from the Chambers Brothers. It's really
Yep.
kind of like our theme.
Yep.
But I got to be honest with you, right now, the songs that I'm writing now are really angry.
Mm.
Mhm.
Yep.
You know, music is a way of releasing frustration too.
Yep.
And I've noticed that there are bands that are daring to
Yeah. Say it.
speak
Yeah.
truth to power. And
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah.
we that used to be us before we added the Chambers and the T Sisters.
Right.
Moonhouse did a ton of political music, and
Yeah. And now you
it
might
was
be back
very
to it.
popular with our fans. But when you're doing soul music, that's love songs, and funk was,
Funk music.
it was fun music, right? And
Right.
so we just stuck to the love, peace, and happiness thing for the last 6 years, and it's been wonderful. But I'm not sure I feel love, peace, and happiness right
Yeah, I hear you. Okay, so we want to move on now to discoveries of the week, if we can.
now. Yeah. So my wife and I are on vacation in Hawaii, and uh, uh, on the Big Island, and so we went on Friday to see Kilauea, and we got there just as the latest event was beginning, and we're literally, we got a little teeny peek of it, and then we went to dinner at the Rim restaurant, which looks into the. You have to imagine this is the caldera is, I don't know, 2.5 or 3 miles across, so it's huge,
Mm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
And my wife got the USGS real time webcam up, and the thing throws up an alert saying something's about to start, and it's like on the west face. She's thinking, wait a minute, that's right there. So she looks over there, and all of a sudden, a
Wow.
little blip, and another little blip, and another little blip, and the next thing you know, you can see the lava flowing down the hill,
Wow.
and that's now we should have gone yesterday. Yesterday was like a geyser,
Hmm.
Mm.
uh, but the thing is, it's you know they don't have that on Mars.
With a restaurant, needless to say.
No,
Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah.
It definitely being able to watch from a restaurant, they definitely don't have on Mars.
Yeah.
And
Yeah. Yeah.
so
Farm to
that for
table on
me
Mars
that
is terrible from what I hear. Yeah.
yeah. Well, hang on, I've seen Matt Damon in the movie. I
Yeah,
mean,
That's right. I'm not
he,
I'm not eating any of his
I
poop
don't want
potatoes.
those potatoes.
oh, I don't know. I mean, I love that movie, and I mean, that movie is the best argument for why these guys are wrong I've ever
Right.
seen. Right?
Right. Right.
But
Right.
they are the Zuckerberg private labs are funding projects where they're growing things for Mars. They are paying young scientists to not go into academia, but work on Mars food. It's insane.
Oh, we lost him.
No, I'm back.
Okay.
It just all of a sudden dropped me. I don't know why.
Yeah. But yeah, they are just diverting young scientists to making Mars bars, I guess.
Well, to be clear, I'm not actually sure that I don't perceive there's a problem with that,
Right.
right? You know, do I wish that people were as focused on solving climate change? Do I wish people were as focused on solving, uh, you know, the structural flaws in our economy? Do I wish that people in Silicon Valley were committed to empowerment and productivity? I do.
Mhm.
Hmm.
But that's not an argument against, you know, having some scientists thinking about what it would be like to create
Mhm.
farms in a zero gravity, zero oxygen environment,
Yeah.
Mhm.
right?
Yeah.
I mean, again, science is about exploration. I'm totally in favor of people going where their heart takes them, but
Yeah.
you would like to think that solving real world problems
Might
was,
come first.
or at least might be on the priority list, right?
Right.
You
Right.
Yeah.
know, you know, I think the real problem we have is that in the United States, we would like to just assume away issues, right?
Hmm.
And we have allowed our medical establishment and scientific establishment to be essentially driven by government funding, which is now controlled by people who don't believe in science.
Right.
Mhm.
That is a problem, right? And Silicon Valley is controlled by people who believe in science fiction.
Mhm.
And so you sit there and you go, who believes in the real world?
Right.
And to what extent does that influence the way we invest? Because the guys who run Silicon Valley, their approach is very straightforward, right? They buy an island and they build a bomb shelter 100 feet underground with fancy digs. They're going to try the Mars thing on Earth,
Mm-hmm.
right? After they've blown everything up. And I'm sitting there going, you know, you actually have the power to prevent this from happening.
So speaking of islands, I'm going to pivot hard back to discoveries of the week and do mine. So since we both have, I think we both have island-based ones. So mine was discovering Beaver Island, the story of Beaver Island, which is an island in Lake Michigan. Have you ever heard of it, Roger?
I have not.
I had not either. But it was ruled from 1848 to 1856 by King James Strong, a Mormon offshoot cult leader, who chased the Irish off the island onto Mackinac Island and conducted piracy on Lake Michigan for years and years and years, abducting young women, killing their male counterparts, marrying them into the Mormons, until finally the Irish came and kicked him off. And as somebody who lived proximal to Mormons for a long time and also married a woman from Ohio, which is proximal to Michigan, this story was fantastic. And I shared it with my son, and who's a big Wikipedia fan, and he couldn't believe he had never seen that before. So piracy on Lake Michigan was my discovery of the week. Mormon King James piracy. So a nice bit of history to remember, right?
All right, Joy, your turn.
So my discovery of the week is I was on the beach on the Chesapeake Bay the other day and I discovered a loggerhead turtle that was stunned and it was just bobbing along the shore. And another woman was walking by and we called the park service and they asked us to bring it up onto the beach and get it into safety. And it was about 2.5, 3 feet in diameter. It was a beautiful creature, and I'd never seen one literally that close. And they had us get it to safety, and they were going to come and check it out and take it to a rescue. But they were able to diagnose over the phone that it wasn't dead. It was stunned, and it was a prime candidate for rehabilitation. So that was super cool.
Yeah, well, your halo shines bright. But you know, to me, the thing that is the common thread here is we're all in settings that are not our normal setting.
Mhm.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And it's really important to get out of your normal setting if you're going to discover stuff.
Yeah.
And
Absolutely.
I think in many ways, one of the things that ails the country is that we refuse to um, open our horizons.
Agree. 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 Well, thank you for taking the time with us today, Roger. We really
It,
appreciate it.
well, I appreciate your listening. And, you know, what I would say to the audience is, listen, just consider the possibilities. And, you know, I think we're in a very awkward time. We're in a very awkward place. And I don't know that any of us has the power to solve this problem on our own. In fact, I'm pretty sure we don't. But I do think we have the power to live our lives according to whatever values we
Mhm.
have chosen. And that's the really important thing. You know, in for me in 2010, I realized that Silicon Valley's culture had changed in ways that I could not support. And, you know, it took between 2010 and 2012 to really be sure that it wasn't just an isolated couple of cases. Um, and, you know, I decided to live my life that way. And the point is that there are lots of people who look at me and go, what an idiot, right? He could have been really rich. And I go, yeah, probably could have been. But you know what? I'm happier this way. And I think each of us benefits from taking a few moments to decide what are the things we really care about? You know,
Mhm.
what are the values we want to live by? Are they our own values or are they somebody else's? And if they're somebody else's, why?
That's a great way to close. Thank you again, Roger.
My pleasure.
All
Take
right.
care.
Thanks so
Thanks for having
much.
me on. Good luck.
Yeah.
All right. Well, that was that was amazing. And thanks again to Roger for making the time for us. I know he's on vacation, but he found the time and slotted us in and gave us those insights. And that was a fantastic interview. So
It was excellent. I mean, I've seen him on MSNBC and, CNN and other places, and the fact that he, donated that much of his time to explain these big concepts to folks like us, we're really grateful.
yeah, absolutely. All right. Well, thanks for tuning in. Thanks to our friends at Provoke the Truth for the music. And as always, let us know what you think. We're at disruptedscience@gmail.com, and we will see you next week.
Bye.